Fleet Officer Liana Vordax scowled at the derelict vessel through the viewport of her patrol shuttle. The ancient human ship hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, its weathered hull a testament to centuries past. Her slender blue fingers danced across the sensor controls, the luminescent patterns on her skin pulsing with contempt. "Central Command, this is Patrol Unit 7 Gamma," she said, her voice crisp with the aristocratic accent of the Vrexian Imperial elite. "I've located the anomaly in Sector 12. Confirmed as dormant human technology, pre-Exodus era. Proceeding with standard salvage protocol." The response crackled through her comm. "Acknowledged, Officer Vordax. Catalog and disable any remaining systems as per regulation. Remember, human relics are classified as historic artifacts only." Liana guided her shuttle alongside the massive hulk of metal and composites. The humans had been formidable once, before the Great Collapse forced their retreat to their home system. Now, their abandoned vessels were little more than curiosities, studied by imperial archaeologists or harvested for basic materials. "Primitive engineering," she muttered as she donned her exosuit. Hard to believe they ever reached the stars with such rudimentary understanding of propulsion. She secured her sidearm, standard procedure, though unnecessary for a dead ship, and initiated the airlock cycle. The shuttle extended a flexible docking tube that sealed against the human vessel's external hatch. After confirming atmospheric integrity, Liana stepped through. Her helmet lights illuminated the dark corridor beyond. The air was stale but breathable, suggesting the ship's basic life support had somehow maintained minimal function through the centuries. Liana activated her scanner, searching for the ship's bridge or command center. The vessel's layout was oddly intuitive, unlike the deliberately complex designs favored by imperial architects. Within minutes, she found what appeared to be the main control room. Dust-covered panels lined the walls, and a large view screen dominated the forward section. Like a museum of technological inadequacy, she chuckled, running a gloved hand over a console. To her surprise, the surface responded with a faint glow, then brightened steadily. Liana stepped back, startled. Impossible. More systems began activating around her, lights flickering on throughout the bridge. A low hum vibrated through the deck plates beneath her feet. Her scanner warned of increasing power signatures throughout the ship. "Command, the vessel is showing signs of reactivation," she reported, her voice tight. "Requesting immediate." A loud hiss interrupted her as a concealed door at the rear of the bridge slid open. Steam billowed out, momentarily obscuring her view. Liana drew her weapon, aiming at the emerging silhouette. A human male stepped forward, dressed in a form-fitting uniform bearing insignia she didn't recognize. He was tall by human standards, with broad shoulders and olive skin. His dark hair was close-cropped, and his eyes, an unsettling gray, regarded her with equal parts confusion and wariness. "Who are you?" he demanded in surprisingly clear universal standard. "What year is this?" Liana kept her weapon trained on him. "I am Fleet Officer Liana Vordax of the Vrexian Imperial Navy. Identify yourself and explain how this vessel remains operational." The man's expression hardened. "Lieutenant Commander Nikolai Reeves, Earth Defense Force. Starship Relentless." He glanced around, taking in the activated bridge. "I was in stasis. Long-term mission protocol." "Impossible," Liana scoffed. "Earth Defense Force was disbanded over 3 centuries ago, after the Treaty of Seoul." Something flashed in the human's eyes, grief, perhaps, or anger. 3 centuries? His voice grew quiet. "Then I'm the last." The ship shuddered around them, more systems coming online with each passing second. Consoles lit up in sequence, and the main view screen flickered to life, displaying the surrounding starfield and Liana's shuttle. "Your vessel shouldn't function," she said, lowering her weapon slightly. Human technology of this era was rudimentary. Even their best ships couldn't maintain operability without constant maintenance. Nikolai moved toward the main console, his movements fluid despite his apparent centuries in stasis. The Relentless was different. Prototype. Self-maintaining, self-repairing. His fingers traced familiar patterns across the controls. She was waiting for me. The deck vibrated beneath them as massive engines stirred to life. Liana's calm erupted with alarmed queries from command, but she found herself momentarily speechless as she watched the human stand tall amid the awakening ship, his presence somehow as commanding as the vessel itself. Their eyes met across the bridge, two beings separated by centuries of history and species evolution, yet connected in this moment of impossible revelation. "Officer Vordax," Nikolai said with unexpected gentleness, "I believe we have much to discuss." The emergency lights bathed the bridge in a soft red glow as Liana paced the deck, her communicator emitting a series of frustrated beeps. Her shuttle had drifted from its docking position when the ancient human vessel powered up, and the magnetic grapples had torn through her shuttle's hull plating. She was effectively stranded. "Central Command is dispatching a retrieval vessel," she announced stiffly, turning to face Nikolai. "They'll arrive in approximately 72 hours. Until then, I suggest we maintain a professional distance." Nikolai stood at the main control panel, his fingers dancing across the interface with practiced ease despite his centuries-long sleep. "That might be difficult," he said without looking up. "Your empire has classified my ship as a threat. The retrieval vessel will likely have orders to destroy the Relentless and possibly you for contamination." Liana's luminescent markings flashed with indignation. "That's absurd. I'm a decorated officer. And I'm supposedly centuries-dead technology," Nikolai countered, finally meeting her gaze. "Yet here we stand." The ship hummed around them, systems continuing their reactivation sequence. Liana reluctantly approached the console, keeping a careful distance from the human. "If what you say is true, we need to move," she admitted. "This sector is routinely patrolled." Nikolai nodded. "I need to complete diagnostics first. Some systems are still coming online after the long dormancy." He hesitated, then added, "I could use an extra set of hands." Liana bristled. "I'm an Imperial officer, not a mechanic." "You're a survivor," Nikolai corrected her. "Or at least you will be if we work together." Over the next several hours, an uneasy partnership formed. Nikolai guided Liana through the ship's engineering deck, explaining systems that defied her understanding of human technological capabilities. The Relentless was indeed unlike any human vessel in Imperial records. "This propulsion system," Liana said, examining the pulsing core at the heart of engineering. "It's using principles similar to our quantum fold drives, but the implementation is." She searched for the word, elegant. Nikolai smiled faintly. "We had to be creative. Resources were limited after the climate wars. As they worked, the gap between their species seemed to narrow." Liana found herself impressed by the human's adaptability and quick thinking. For his part, Nikolai watched with fascination as her bioluminescent skin patterns shifted with her emotions, brightening when she solved a problem, darkening when frustrated. "Your people evolved those markings for communication?" he asked during a brief rest period. Liana nodded, surprised by his genuine interest. "Yes. They were crucial for hunting in our world's dense forests. The patterns are partly voluntary, partly autonomic. They're beautiful," Nikolai said simply. The unexpected compliment sent a ripple of light cascading down her arms, a reaction she couldn't suppress. She quickly changed the subject. "The ship needs more repairs than we can manage alone. There's a maintenance bay one level down," Nikolai suggested. Automated systems might still be operational. They descended together through narrow corridors. Liana became acutely aware of the human's physical presence, the warmth radiating from his body, his measured breathing, the occasional brush of his arm against hers in the confined space. Humans were so different from her people, solid where Vrexians were lithe, warm-blooded where her kind ran cool, their skin a canvas of subtle colors rather than luminescent patterns. In the maintenance bay, they found robotic systems in surprising working order. As Nikolai activated them, his hand accidentally grazed Liana's. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. "Sorry," he murmured, his gray eyes meeting hers for a moment longer than necessary. Hours later, after critical systems were stabilized, they stood together on the observation deck. The vast starfield stretched before them, familiar yet somehow different when viewed through the ancient vessel's reinforced viewports. "We should reach the Cygnus expanse by tomorrow," Nikolai said. "We can lose any pursuit in the nebula fields." Liana turned to him, her expression serious. "You understand that I'm committing treason by not attempting to disable this vessel? By helping you?" Nikolai's gaze was steady. "I understand sacrifice, Officer Vordax. I've lost everything I ever knew. My world. My time. Everyone I ever loved." His voice remained even, but pain flickered behind his eyes. "Why are you helping me?" The question hung between them, unanswered but not unacknowledged. Liana looked away, her markings pulsing with conflicted emotions. "Get some rest, Commander," she said finally. "I'll take first watch." As Nikolai turned to leave, he paused. "Liana," he said, testing her name on his tongue. "Thank you." The sound of her name, not her title, spoken in his deep voice stirred something unexpected within her. She watched him go, wondering how a human from the distant past could suddenly feel like the most real thing in her carefully ordered universe. The Relentless shuddered as another Imperial blast grazed its shields. Nikolai's hands moved with practiced precision across the helm controls, the ancient ship responding to his commands with surprising agility. "Your friends are persistent," he said, glancing at Liana who monitored the tactical display beside him. 3 destroyers, and they've called in 2 interceptor squadrons." Liana's skin patterns flickered with anxiety. "They're not my friends anymore," she muttered. "Not since I chose to warn you about the incoming fleet." Her slender blue fingers adjusted the sensor array. "The Vicari asteroid belt is 2 minutes ahead. We can lose them there." Nikolai nodded, his jaw set in determination. The last 48 hours had transformed their reluctant alliance into something neither had anticipated. When Liana intercepted Imperial communications revealing the order to destroy the Relentless with all aboard, including her, the choice to stand with Nikolai had come with surprising clarity. Diverting auxiliary power to aft shields, she announced, moving with increasing confidence among the human systems. The ship's design, once alien to her, now felt almost intuitive. The first of the asteroids loomed ahead, massive chunks of rock and ice spinning in a chaotic dance. Nikolai guided the ship into the field, weaving between the celestial obstacles with precision that spoke of extensive training. "You've done this before," Liana observed, bracing herself as the ship banked sharply around a particularly large asteroid. A half-smile played across Nikolai's lips. Asteroid racing was a favorite pastime in the outer colonies. "This is actually bringing back good memories." Another blast rocked the ship, closer this time. The Imperial destroyers had followed them into the belt, though the larger vessels moved more cautiously through the hazardous terrain. 2 interceptors, closing fast, Liana warned, her markings pulsing with alarm. "I see them." Nikolai's expression hardened as he executed a series of maneuvers that sent the Relentless spiraling through a narrow gap between colliding asteroids. One of the pursuing interceptors wasn't quick enough to adjust and disappeared in a brilliant flash as it collided with the cosmic debris. Liana couldn't help but admire his skill. The humans she had learned about in Imperial history were portrayed as reckless and technologically inferior. Yet Nikolai demonstrated a mastery and intuition that defied those teachings. There's a dense cluster ahead, she said, studying the tactical display. If we can reach it, the Imperial sensors will have difficulty tracking us. Nikolai nodded, adjusting course. As they dove deeper into the asteroid field, the pursuing vessels fell further behind, unwilling to match their daring trajectory. For several tense minutes, they navigated the treacherous path until finally, the sensor alerts quieted. They had slipped beyond Imperial detection, at least temporarily. Nikolai let out a long breath, rolling his shoulders to release the tension. Nice call on the asteroid cluster. Nice flying, Liana returned, surprised by the warmth in her voice. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. In the dim light of the bridge, with adrenaline still coursing through their veins, the distance between their species seemed less significant than the growing connection they shared. Nikolai reached out, hesitantly, and touched her hand where it rested on the console. We make a good team. Liana's skin illuminated with a gentle, pulsing glow, a reaction she would once have found embarrassing but now couldn't bring herself to hide. Yes, she said softly. We do. The moment stretched between them until an alert from the navigation system broke the spell. Nikolai reluctantly turned his attention back to the controls. We should find somewhere to make repairs, he said, his voice a touch rougher than before. That last hit damaged our port stabilizers. Liana consulted the star charts she had uploaded from her communicator before disabling its tracking functions. The Helios trading post is within range. It's technically neutral territory, the Empire maintains a presence there, but the local administrators are known for their flexible policies. Flexible policies, Nikolai repeated with a grin. I like the sound of that. As they set course for Helios, Liana found herself watching Nikolai more intently. The way his hands moved over the controls, the focused set of his jaw, the occasional smile that transformed his face. He was becoming less an alien curiosity and more a man, complex, capable, and increasingly important to her. They spent the journey to Helios repairing what systems they could. Working side by side in the confined spaces of the maintenance shafts, they shared stories of their vastly different lives. Nikolai spoke of Earth before the climate catastrophes, of oceans and forests that Liana knew now existed only in protected biodomes. She told him of growing up among the Vrexian elite, the rigid expectations, the carefully controlled paths available to her. Is that why you joined the fleet? Nikolai asked as they reconnected power couplings in a narrow service corridor. To escape those expectations? Liana considered the question. Partly, she admitted. The fleet offered structure but also adventure. The chance to see beyond our star system. She paused, her markings dimming slightly. I believed I was serving a greater purpose. And now? His gray eyes studied her, genuinely interested in her answer. Now I'm questioning everything I was taught, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. About humans. About the Empire. About my place in all of it. Nikolai's hand found hers in the dimly lit corridor, his touch gentle but sure. For what it's worth, I think you're exactly where you're meant to be. The warmth of his skin against hers sent ripples of light cascading across her blue flesh. This time, she didn't try to suppress the reaction. Instead, she turned her hand to intertwine her fingers with his, marveling at how natural it felt despite their physical differences. We should reach Helios by morning, she said, not moving away. Whatever happens next. I'm glad I found your ship, Nikolai. The smile he gave her then made her heart race in a way no Imperial officer would ever approve of, and she found she didn't care at all. Helios Trading Post was a sprawling complex carved into the side of a mineral-rich asteroid, its docking bays and market halls illuminated by artificial sunlight meant to mimic the distant star it was named for. The Relentless slipped into one of the more secluded berths, registration codes manipulated by Liana to classify them as a private research vessel from the outer provinces. We can't stay long, she warned as they prepared to disembark. She had exchanged her imperial uniform for civilian clothes found in the ship's storage, simple garments that hung loosely on her slender frame but effectively concealed her distinctive officer's markings. My former colleagues will expand their search parameters soon enough. Nikolai nodded, adjusting the outdated but serviceable jacket he'd found among his own belongings. 3 centuries out of fashion, but on Helios, where styles from across the galaxy mingled, he wouldn't stand out too dramatically. We need power converters, shielding materials, and navigation updates, he said. 2 hours, in and out. They moved through the crowded marketplace, an eclectic mix of species from across the known systems. Liana kept close to Nikolai, hyper-aware of the casual brush of his arm against hers, the protective way he positioned himself between her and the more rowdy trading groups. At a parts dealer run by a grizzled Talaxian with more mechanical limbs than organic ones, they found most of what they needed. As Nikolai haggled over prices, displaying a surprising knowledge of current economic values despite his temporal displacement, Liana noticed a digital bulletin board flashing recent alerts. Her heart froze when she saw her own face among the imperial notices, alongside an image of Nikolai captured from a security scan. The alert designated them both as high-priority fugitives, dangerous and armed. "We need to hurry," she murmured when he rejoined her, subtly directing his attention to the bulletin. They collected their purchases quickly and were making their way back through a less populated corridor when Liana spotted 2 Imperial security officers checking identifications ahead. She pulled Nikolai into a shadowy alcove, pressing close against him as the patrol passed. "That was close," she whispered, looking up at him. "Too close," he agreed, his voice low. But neither moved away, suddenly aware of their proximity, her body flush against his in the narrow space. His hand had instinctively found her waist to steady her, and now rested there, warm and solid. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Nikolai's gaze dropped to her lips, a question in his eyes. Liana answered by rising slightly on her toes, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, the meeting of 2 worlds. His lips were warmer than hers, softer than she had imagined. She felt the gentle pressure of his hand at her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more necessary. When they finally broke apart, Liana's entire body glowed with a soft blue luminescence, a response she couldn't control, a visible manifestation of the emotions swirling within her. "We should get back to the ship," she said, her voice unsteady. Nikolai nodded, but captured her hand in his, their fingers intertwining as they made their way through the back corridors of the trading post. Safe aboard the Relentless once more, they worked together to install the new components, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. As Nikolai calibrated the new power converters, Liana finally asked the question that had been troubling her since their escape began. "Why does the Empire fear your ship so much? What makes the Relentless different from other human vessels of your era?" Nikolai stilled, then set down his tools. "I think it's time I showed you." He led her to a secured compartment near the ship's core, a section she hadn't accessed during their repairs. After inputting a complex sequence, the door slid open to reveal a small chamber housing a cylindrical device pulsing with a soft, golden light. "This is the heart of the Relentless," Nikolai explained, his expression solemn. "The reason for my mission, for the stasis protocol. We called it the Harmony Core." Liana approached the device cautiously, her scientific training registering its impossible properties. "It's folding space and time simultaneously." "How is that possible?" "It was an accident, initially. A research project studying stellar phenomena. We discovered that certain energy patterns could harmonize across dimensional boundaries." Nikolai's voice held a mixture of pride and sadness. "It creates perfect energy, unlimited, self-sustaining, with no depletion of resources and no waste." Liana's eyes widened as she understood the implications. The entire imperial economy is built on controlling energy resources. If this technology became widely available. Exactly, Nikolai confirmed. No more scarcity. No more resource wars. No more power hierarchies based on who controls the fuel. They'd destroy anything to keep this secret, Liana whispered. Even a decorated officer who learned too much. Nikolai moved to stand beside her, taking her hand as they gazed at the gently pulsing core. I was sent out with the prototype, to hide it until humanity was ready. But I never expected to sleep for centuries. Never expected to wake to find Earth isolated and an alien empire controlling the stars. Liana turned to face him, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw with her fingertips. And you never expected me? No, he agreed, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. You're the most beautiful surprise in 300 years. Later, in the privacy of the captain's quarters, they came together again, exploration becoming passion. The differences in their physiology became points of fascination rather than division, her luminescence responding to his touch, his warmth enveloping her cooler skin. Their bodies found harmony despite evolving on worlds light years apart, proving that some connections transcended species and time. As they lay together afterward, Liana's head resting on Nikolai's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, she knew with certainty that she could never return to her former life. Whatever happened next, her path was irrevocably tied to his. The harmony core, she murmured against his skin. It could change everything. It already has, Nikolai replied softly, stroking the luminescent patterns along her spine. For us, at least. The ship hummed around them, a sanctuary in the vast darkness of space, but both knew their reprieve was temporary. Soon, they would need to face the empire that hunted them, and the future neither had imagined possible just days before. Imperial alarms blared through the Helios trading post as Liana and Nikolai sprinted toward the docking bay. Their brief sanctuary had been compromised, an informant had recognized them despite their disguises. Behind them, the methodical thud of Imperial combat boots echoed through the corridors. Bay 16, Liana gasped, her luminescence pulsing rapidly with exertion and fear. Almost there. Nikolai grasped her hand tightly as they rounded the final corner. The Relentless waited, its ancient hull somehow majestic among the sleeker modern vessels. But between them and freedom stood a squad of Imperial enforcer droids, their weapon arms raised and targeting systems locked on the fugitives. Surrender immediately, the lead droid commanded, its synthesized voice emotionless. By order of Fleet Commander Tyrus, you are charged with treason, theft of Imperial artifacts, and harboring prohibited technology. Liana stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. I am Fleet Officer Liana Vordax. I demand to speak with command. Former Officer Vordax, the droid corrected. Your rank has been stripped. You are classified as Traitor Status Alpha. Nikolai's hand moved subtly to the small energy pistol they had acquired in the marketplace. Liana sensed his intention and shifted slightly, preparing for his move. Now, he shouted suddenly, diving to the left as he fired 3 rapid bursts at the droid's optical sensors. Chaos erupted. The droid's return fire scorched the walls around them as Liana and Nikolai used the confusion to slip past, racing toward the Relentless. The ship's entry ramp lowered automatically as they approached, responding to the emergency transponder in Nikolai's pocket. They tumbled inside, the ramp sealing behind them as energy blasts peppered the hull. Nikolai immediately headed for the bridge, Liana close behind. They've deployed a docking clamp, she warned, scanning the external sensors. And there's a battlecruiser entering the system. Nikolai's hands flew over the controls, initiating the emergency launch sequence. The new power converters should give us enough boost to break free, but it's going to drain our reserves. The ship shuddered as its engines fought against the mechanical restraint. Metal screamed against metal, the sound reverberating through the hull like a creature in pain. It's not enough, Liana said, her voice tight. She turned to Nikolai, decision crystallizing in her eyes. We need to engage the harmony core directly. Nikolai hesitated. That's never been done in a docking situation. The spatial distortion could damage the station. We don't have a choice, she insisted. If they capture us, the core will be destroyed, and everything it could mean for the future will be lost. Her hand found his, squeezing gently. Everything we could mean will be lost. Their eyes held for a long moment before Nikolai nodded. Together, then. They raced to the core chamber, the ship continuing its futile struggle against the docking clamp. Inside, the golden cylinder pulsed more rapidly, as if sensing the danger. We'll need to modify the containment field to channel the energy directly to the propulsion systems, Nikolai explained as his fingers danced across the control panel. It's theoretical, but it should work, Liana finished, already adjusting the quantum stabilizers. Her imperial training in advanced physics, once used to maintain the Empire's energy monopoly, now served to challenge it. The core's glow intensified as they worked, bathing them in golden light. Through the ship's communication system, they heard the Imperial commander demanding surrender, threatening immediate destruction if they resisted further. Ready, Liana announced, completing the final calibration. Nikolai took her hand, their fingers intertwining. Together, he said again, and they simultaneously activated the modified sequence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the harmony core flared with blinding brilliance, its energy surging through the pathways they had created. The ship didn't simply break free from the docking clamp, it transcended it. The Relentless phased partially out of conventional space, the clamp passing harmlessly through its suddenly semi-corporeal hull. On the station, sensors went wild. The Imperial battlecruiser that had been closing in suddenly detected the impossible energy signature and opened fire, but its weapons couldn't target what couldn't fully be perceived. Liana and Nikolai raced back to the bridge, watching in awe as the Relentless responded to the core's power. The ship accelerated beyond its designed capabilities, stars blurring around them as they broke free of the station's gravitational influence. It worked, Liana breathed, her entire body glowing with elation. We're free. But their celebration was short-lived. The tactical display showed the battlecruiser in pursuit, along with a squadron of Imperial fast-attack vessels. Despite their head start, they couldn't outrun the Empire forever. We need somewhere to go, Nikolai said, examining the star charts. Somewhere beyond Imperial reach. Liana studied the display, then pointed to a region marked in faded red. The Forbidden Sectors. The Empire avoids them due to unusual spatial anomalies. With the core's protection, we might navigate them safely. Nikolai plotted the course, his expression determined. As the ship accelerated toward the boundary of known space, proximity alarms shrieked. The Imperial forces were closing, weapons charged. They're within firing range, Liana warned. Shields at maximum, but they won't hold against concentrated fire. The first barrage struck, rocking the ancient vessel. Systems flickered as energy surged through damaged circuitry. Nikolai fought to maintain control while Liana rerouted power to critical functions. We're not going to make it to the boundary, she realized, watching the Imperial ships close the gap. Nikolai looked at her, a decision forming in his eyes. There's one more thing the core can do. It's why I was really sent out here. He took her hands. The harmony core doesn't just provide energy, it can create a dimensional fold. A new beginning. Understanding dawned on Liana's face. A jump to somewhere beyond their reach. Beyond this space entirely. It was meant to be an escape route for humanity if Earth became uninhabitable, Nikolai explained. A way to start fresh in a new reality. But we never finished testing it before I was put in stasis. Another blast rocked the ship, more violent than before. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems began to fail. "We don't have much choice," Liana said. She looked at the human who had changed everything for her, her beliefs, her loyalties, her heart. "Wherever it takes us, we go together." Nikolai pulled her close, kissing her fiercely as the ship shuddered around them. When they parted, his eyes held both fear and hope. "Are you sure? You'd be leaving everything behind." Liana's luminescence pulsed with certainty. "You are my everything now." Together they initiated the core's dimensional protocol. The golden energy spread throughout the ship, enveloping them in its warm glow. The pursuing Imperial vessels seemed to slow and distort from their perspective, as if time itself was bending around the relentless. The core's chamber became the epicenter of a brilliant flash that consumed the ship entirely. For one breathless moment, Liana felt herself exist in multiple realities simultaneously, and in each one, Nikolai was by her side. When the light faded, the starfield outside had changed. Unfamiliar constellations painted the darkness, a new universe stretching before them. The Imperial ships were gone, the threat left behind in a dimension they could no longer reach. Nikolai checked the ship's systems, confirming what they already sensed. "We've crossed over. We're somewhere else." Liana moved to stand beside him, her hand finding his as they gazed at the unknown stars. "Not somewhere else," she corrected softly. "Home. We're home." As the Relentless drifted into this new frontier, they turned to each other, no longer divided by species or allegiance, but united in the most profound way possible, across space, time, and dimension. Their kiss sealed a promise that whatever adventures awaited in this new realm, they would face them together. The ancient human ship, once mocked for its primitive design, had delivered them to a future neither could have imagined, one where the boundaries between their worlds no longer existed, and where their union might someday bridge the gap between their peoples, forging a harmony as perfect as the core that had brought them together.